Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out on her honeymoon. Classic. Want to welcome back to the program, executive editor of the American Prospect, host of the Wrap-Up.
The weekly roundup, and also the Organized Money podcast.
Oh, right. Exactly. All right. I'll get that straight.
Got a great one out today. OrganizedMoney.fm.
The Organized Money podcast is actually one of my rare listens. I don't listen to many other shows, but I always learn something from both you and Stoller on this.
We got a great one today on Spotify. It's really good.
Folks should check that out. But in the meantime, the Senate reconciliation bill, no longer called the One Big Beautiful Bill, care of Chuck Schumer. He really showed him.
Keep going, Chuck.
You can't call that officially that. Just passed, and the final passage of the bill was released about 15 minutes ago. 900 some odd pages. I wanted David Dayen on because I know by now he's read all 900 and whatnot pages of that bill. David, welcome back to the program.
Fortunately for me, it was only 887.
Oh, so, all right. Well, that's why you got here. That's why you were able to get here so early.
Yeah. I spot checked it. Let's say that.
I think people know the headline story. $1 trillion, it appears, to be cut from Medicaid. Mm-hmm. It is going to possibly cause the deaths of about 110,000 people over the course of the next 5-10 years who would otherwise have health care. It's going to kick up to 12 million people off of Medicaid by 2034, 3 million off of SNAP.
You factor out the deaths, it'll only kick 11.9 million people off.
I guess that's
Those
true.
People will die. So don't be so harsh, as J.D. Vance would say. It's only minutia.
Let's not get into the minutia of this stuff. Right. And then, of course, it assaults like any type of not so small advances we had made to deal with like decarbonizing our economy. It is shocking. At the last minute, apparently they got rid of the excise tax that would have actually taxed things like. But explain this. I've mentioned it many times on the show, but when we get into like the deficit and the debt, the Senate did something, and I don't understand how they got away with doing it without having to sort of fire the parliamentarian, which was an accounting trick that makes it seem like this is not adding huge trillions of dollars to the debt. Now, I'm not necessarily so concerned about the debt as I am it completely obfuscating what the reality of this bill is.
Well, the reality is that they couldn't have passed the bill without this trick. So the gimmick is called the current policy baseline. And what that means is that the Trump tax cuts, as you know, expire at the end of this year. And one of the big things in this bill extends those Trump tax cuts and makes them permanent. And that, under a current law, because the law is the tax cuts expire, and so starting in 2026, they would pick up again. So under that current law baseline, that would cost almost $3.8 trillion over that 10-year period, right? So what the Senate Republicans said is that, well, actually, that's just current policy. We're just extending what was already the policy of the United States. And so that actually costs $0. And that is the difference in this bill between a bill that will cost, and we don't know about the final stuff, like the killing of the excise tax, and there were some other changes. So we don't know the final number, but at least as of this weekend, the estimate was it cost $3.3 trillion over that decade, the bill that would add that much to the debt. Now, with the current policy baseline, it looks like it saves $500 billion over that 10-year period.
So it's like the functional equivalent of like, I make a decision to rent a car for 10 years. and I've been renting that car. I've been paying whatever it is, leasing the car. I've been paying $350 a month.
Mhm.
And then at the end of that 10 years, I say, well, it's not going to cost me anything to keep paying for this because I've been paying for it already,
Right.
essentially.
Right. I mean, it does offer opportunities to the other side if they ever get back into power for Democrats. I mean, if you conceive of this, and actually Republicans were asked this on the record and they conceded that this would happen. If you passed a bill that said, we are imposing Medicare for all for a year or a week or a day, and then you subsequently pass a bill that says we are just extending Medicare for all to make it permanent, that permanence of Medicare for all would not cost any money.
Right.
So I am ready in the Project 2029 that I'm sure Third Way and Anne-Marie Slaughter are putting together for the Medicare for All for One Day Act of 2029, which will then subsequently be followed up by making it permanent and costing no money.
That would be encouraging. But let me ask you one more question about the permanence of the tax cuts. When we say permanent, does that just mean that they're not set to sunset? I mean, how do they? Oh, and the way that they can make them permanent is
as long as they do them for 10 years, they're permanent. I mean, that's kind of under the budget scoring that we have. If you say these tax cuts are now permanent, the way that it's scored, it only looks at the 10-year budget window.
But do they don't sunset?
They will not sunset. No.
And they don't have to sunset because theoretically they don't exist.
But here's the funny thing. There are other taxes in this bill that do sunset. All of Trump's campaign promise taxes, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on interest on auto loans. It's not no tax on Social Security. It's a deduction for people over the age of 65. All of those are 4 years. They're only there for 4 years, right? So they could then use this gimmick again if Republicans are still in power and say, oh, well, current law is no tax on tips, so we'll just extend that and it won't cost any money. So they are simultaneously using a current law baseline to shrink the perceived cost of certain taxes and using a current policy baseline to eliminate the cost of certain taxes in the course of the same bill.
Let's talk about the AI ban.
Let's talk about anything else.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess, the AI ban is gone.
Yeah, that was a good thing.
The ban on the ability to regulate AI is gone.
Just to be clear, it was going to be a 10-year moratorium on regulation of AI at the state level. And the way they were going to do this is they had a pot of money that states wouldn't be able to access unless they agreed to this moratorium. And there was a deal attempted by some senators on the Republican side who disagreed with this. They shrunk it for a bit, and then that deal blew up. And then there was a vote last night to strip this moratorium from the bill, and it passed 99-1. So big tech lobbyists who were pushing for this very heavily and hard obviously miscalculated severely that they would be able to muscle this through, because literally almost every senator voted against it in the end.
Yeah, that's not very close. So that is gone. What are the other what are the things in the bill, as you can tell right now, that are going to be problems for the House? Now, when this goes to the House, are they going to do a conference, or is the House sort of just decides whether they're
going to try? I mean, Mike Johnson, Speaker, is going to try to pass this immediately. In fact, there is a Rules Committee session today, and House members are expected back to Washington tomorrow to start voting on this. And, in a perfect world, Johnson would have this on the president's desk by July 4th. Now, is he going to be able to do that? Well, there are several things that the House Freedom Caucus had said we're absolutely not going to pass that are in this Senate bill. The first one is the House isn't going by this current policy baseline gimmick. And so they see red ink in this bill more than what they wanted in the bill. So the House, in their budget resolution, said we can have no more than $2.5 trillion in tax cuts more than the spending cuts in the bill. If that relationship isn't maintained, you have to reduce the tax cuts. You have to change those in some way so that they aren't as costly. And that is not in here. That violates the budget resolution. And more important, it violates the promise that was made to the House Freedom Caucus that this would happen. And that's about 30 people. The House can only lose, Republicans only lose 3 votes in the House to pass this. So that's one, is that it's too much taxation, or too much, not enough spending cuts. The second is on the energy provisions. So you mentioned that there were these changes to the clean energy provisions that made them very, very harsh and would have made it almost impossible to produce a solar or wind project in this country. Because not only were the tax credits phased out very quickly, but there was this new excise tax on solar and wind projects that would have increased the cost of building a solar or wind project to a degree that you couldn't ever pencil it out. Those were taken out at the last minute at the end of the bill. I think also to get Lisa Murkowski's vote. Lisa Murkowski got a bounty of things, a bunch of gifts, including tax breaks for whaling captains in Alaska and tax breaks for Alaskan fishing villages. This is literally in the bill. But another thing she actually wanted is to weaken the phase out of these tax credits. So the tax on solar and wind is out. As long as you begin construction on a solar or wind project in the next year, you get the tax credit. You have to have that in service by 2027. So there's going to actually, if this bill passes, be a gold rush of solar and wind projects trying to get in under the wire within a year of passage of this enactment of the bill. However, this is exactly the thing that the House Freedom Caucus didn't want. As a condition of them passing the bill in the House, they wanted the energy tax credits much, much harsher. And they've rolled back to being weaker to a degree in the Senate version. So you put those two things together, and that's on the hardline deficit hawk side. That's going to be a problem. And then the Medicaid cuts are still much more harsh in the Senate bill than they were in the House bill. Now, there is a rural hospital fund that was doubled in the final version from $25 billion to $50 billion, but that's still a fraction of the nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts over 10 years that are going to be in this bill. And there are some House moderates who have said these Medicaid cuts are a bridge too far. I can't vote for this bill. So you put that all together, they can only lose 3 votes. Tom Massey is one. He's not going to vote for this bill. Let's say they get one, they minimize their losses to maybe one guy. There's a guy, David Valadao, who's in the Central Valley of California. His district has the second highest concentration of Medicaid recipients in the country. He's probably not voting for this bill. So that's 2. So you can only lose 1 more and pass the bill on the House side, which means you have to accommodate the Freedom Caucus and make sure that they pass this version of the bill. Ultimately, what this comes down to is who's going to defy Donald Trump. Massey will, because he's done it all the time. Valadao voted for Trump's impeachment. He doesn't mind going against him. But who else is going to? Who else is going to say to Donald Trump, I'm not passing your agenda because I don't like this part or that part? They're going to have to prove to me that they're willing to do that.
I got a couple of questions. So there's 30 members of the House Freedom Caucus. If they had put down a real hard line on this, if they accept this, there's no point to them. right? I mean, I'm just like, I'm trying to give people some sense of like how they can do this. If you live in a red district with the House Freedom Caucus, your congressperson does not know what your politics are. I would call that office and go, I put you in there for fiscal sanity. And if you could actually vote for this, there's no point in having a Freedom Caucus.
I'd like to see the delta of Majority Report viewers who live in hard right conservative districts, but maybe there are some.
Oh, we have a lot. You'd be
do.
surprised. In fact, those are some of the most intense audience members because they have to basically be inside.
There's another thing that those Freedom Caucus members have to think about, and that is Elon Musk. So Elon Musk is very much against this bill, partially on the energy grounds, but also on the fact that it doesn't cut enough spending for his liking. Like, he is a kind of a hard right Tea Partier at this point, Elon Musk. And he is the world's richest man, and he has a lot of money to fund primary challenges against Freedom Caucus members if they don't adhere to the deal that they set up just a few months ago.
So when you call those Freedom Caucus House members, say you are personally writing Elon Musk and asking him to fund a primary challenger to them. In terms of the House moderates, the COLA stuff that they wanted seems to be more or less close to what they wanted. They wanted 40,000.
You're talking about SALT?
SALT, I'm sorry. SALT.
So, yeah, as far as the state and local tax deduction is concerned, they again, to make this look cheaper, did a partial change to that deduction cap. So the SALT caucus wanted to change from you can write off $10,000 of your state and local taxes on your federal taxes. They wanted to up that to $40,000. That the ultimate deal is that is true for only 5 years. So once again, they use this current law baseline to make those look cheaper, even though they could now, the precedent in the Senate, they could come back and make it permanent and it would cost $0, right? So one member of the SALT caucus, this guy Nick LaLota in New York, said, I don't agree with that. I'm not going to vote for that. But we kind of, I'm a little skeptical of him as well, whether he'll actually defy Trump on that.
And those are now the 3 votes that they can afford to lose. Is Jerry Connolly's seat filled?
It's not filled. They had a primary. The general election doesn't happen, I believe, until September.
So it's only 3 votes they can afford to lose, even without Connolly's vote in the House?
Connolly, even without Raul Grijalva, even without there was another member of the House Democrats who died. Even with all 3 of those gone, they can only lose 3 votes. If they were there, they would only be able to lose 2 votes.
It would be nice if we didn't have so many people in the Democratic caucus pass away.
Yeah.
What do you think the chances are? I mean, it goes over to the House. It feels like that this is going to happen. Like that it's unlikely that anybody's going to buck Donald Trump.
I mean, as I said, they have to show me that they're willing to do that before I would believe it. So maybe it'll happen. If the Freedom Caucus actually believed in the principles they espouse, this bill would not pass, right? But I don't believe that they do. They have to show me that they're willing to buck Donald Trump in order to do that.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning of the year a little bit, because when the first budget resolution was passed, the one that sets up like sort of the umbrella to allow reconciliation to happen, there was a sense by all of this sort of like conventional wisdom people, like the top sort of like Democrats, that this was never going to pass, that they weren't going to be able to do it. And they were surprised that Johnson got it across the threshold. And I think to a certain extent, the threat of Elon Musk primarying was underestimated as an incentive factor.
Here's what I'd say. Going into 2025, Mike Johnson had no track record of legislative success. And we were coming out of a 2-year session where the caucus was so fractured and so divided that they couldn't even do basic things like hang on to a speaker. So there was some reason to believe that it was going to be problematic for Johnson to get the herd of cats in line. So I don't disagree with that. I think that it was certainly the conventional wisdom, and there was good reason for it. There was actual evidence for that. What I think was underplayed is the degree to which the Republican Party is just Donald Trump's party.
Right.
And if Donald Trump wants something, he's likely to get it. And so that has really that has informed this entire process.
Once they pass this bill, it's basically done, right? I mean, their legislative session. I mean, I guess there's the 2026 budget, but it's
there's
largely
a 2026 budget. There's the crypto bill only passed the Senate, so they got to figure out what to do in the House with that. There are some other things here and there that need to be done, but yes, this was the entire agenda. Now, one thing that's being talked about, and this is particularly as an enticement to the Freedom Caucus, is Mike Johnson has started floating, we'll do another reconciliation bill in 2026. And we'll get you you don't like that there aren't enough spending cuts in this one. That one will do all spending cuts. And we'll get you the spending cuts you need in the 2026 version of the reconciliation bill. And that may be enough to get the Freedom Caucus on board. They'll say, we're going to do this next year. Now, whether they actually do it next year, who knows? But
I was going to say, are they aware that the 2026 is an election year? But it does feel like the Republicans know that, I mean, the way that they govern, the way that they legislate, I should say, they do it like they know they are going to get voted out of office no matter what in the next election. And so we're going to do as much as we can.
If you hear from some liberals, they'll say they're voting like they think they're never going to be voted out of office. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. It's sort of a bit conspiratorial for me that they're not going to hold elections next year or something like that. But I think your way of framing it is more correct, that when Republicans get in office, they realize they have limited political capital and they start spending it as fast as they can.
Anything else we left on the table? I mean, this is going to be like a real world disaster for many people. Is there what was the last piece of legislation?
I will tell you the strangeness around the Murkowski deal. So Murkowski got those little tax credits and everything, but she got two big things, which was this was in the original deal, to increase the federal share of Medicaid for Alaska and to waive what is called the cost sharing of the SNAP program, which is more commonly known as food stamps for Alaska, whereby the state of Alaska would have to pay into a federal share to maintain that program. Typically, SNAP is entirely paid for at the federal level. This would be the first time states would have to participate, and states don't have that money, and it would lead to severe cuts to the SNAP program. So she wanted both of those. The parliamentarian threw both of those out, and they worked really hard to get the Medicaid thing back in, and it didn't work. The parliamentarian literally this was on C-SPAN. The parliamentarian was standing at the desk with a handwritten amendment, and there was a debate happening between staffers of the Republican and Democratic caucus, and the parliamentarian said, no, we can't do that Medicaid thing. However, they did get this cost-sharing waiver for Alaska, but it's not just for Alaska, because the parliamentarian threw it out thinking, well, this is just a policy for one state. This is so you can get that. So they expanded that cost sharing to the 10 states with the highest payment error rates in SNAP. They get more time to before they do the cost sharing. that includes New York, that includes New Jersey, it includes Maryland, it includes Massachusetts, it includes Oregon. A host of blue states now get this benefit along with Alaska because they needed it to buy Murkowski's vote. Now, so here's this program. The program is supposed to be, we're going to make SNAP more efficient. So we're going to give you an incentive if you have low error rates in your program, and we're going to punish you if you have high error rates in your program. However, now, because the high error rates get an exemption, you're only punishing the people in the states in the middle now in terms of error rates. The people on the low side don't have to pay the federal cost share. The people on the high side don't have to pay the federal cost share. Only the states in the middle have to pay, which makes no sense whatsoever. And as Amy Klobuchar said on the Senate floor, this is an incentive for more errors in SNAP. That's
because it gets you into the top 10. It's almost like you want to, you're going to throw the last couple of games of a season. Right. So you get a higher lottery pick.
Yeah, there's tanking going on now. So it's a great, this is the kind of backwards lawmaking that we've engaged in order to, for Republicans to pass this bill.
What was the name I think it was during the Obama years, the Golden Gate giveaway or whatever it was?
Well, there was the Cornhusker kickback.
That's what it was. The Cornhusker. This is what that is.
It is what that is. And I call it the Alaska Gold Rush. But you could call it the Kodiak kickback, I assume. But the point is that Murkowski, look, I mean, there's a world in which every senator should be fighting for their state.
Right.
And, Josh Hawley looks like an idiot. He didn't get anything from Missouri the way that Murkowski did for Alaska. All of these other senators didn't fight as hard for their states as Murkowski did. And, if they did, maybe we wouldn't have any of these Medicaid cuts or SNAP cuts.
Where does Josh Hawley's perspective on place him on the populist meter?
I think he's forfeited that completely by voting for this bill. He came out and gave this whiny speech about how, this shouldn't be what the Republican Party is. We shouldn't be cutting Medicaid, even though he's voting to cut Medicaid. And
that's some real leadership. That's called leadership.
And now his theory is, I can cut off some of these taxes at the pass or cut off some of these Medicaid cuts down the road. And good luck to you on that one, Josh.
Well, he wanted to be able to make the changes from the inside and be one of the people who are voting. David Dayen, thanks so much for hopping on and walking us through this. It's folks should be checking out the Prospect on a daily basis to get this information in a way that nobody else has. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.